Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Nadine and I are back, and today we're going to talk about something a bit more heavy actually, because it is so important to actually address those kind of topics and issues, let's say, or let's also say how you can heal from something like that, and how important it is to actually acknowledge the more, let's say, the stuff in life that no one wants to talk about or that no one actually wants to deal with, but that's exactly why it's so important.
Yes, so we're following on from the last video. So today we're going to be delving a little bit more into toxic relationship dynamics, growing up, and I'm sure as a lot of people have, with narcissistic parents or parents who were simply just emotionally unavailable. They could not or would not be there emotionally for you on a most fundamental basis. So not necessarily narcissistic personality disorder, but just lacking in that emotional connection with their child. So we're going to talk a little bit about the impacts that has on your own emotional and spiritual development. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to actually start the process of healing if you have grown up in that sort of childhood environment.
And also just in general, how to kind of understand the situation a bit more, because like only through accepting something, even if it's like bad, you can actually, you don't deny it anymore. You can only, we talked before a bit about like, it's like opening, you have like baggage or little package, and only when you open it and you actually see inside, you can unravel it and see, okay, this is what I want to have, this is what I want to keep, and all the other stuff might be, oh, this is yucky stuff, I don't want that, I have to throw it away. Exactly. But you first have to open that package and see what's in it.
Exactly. So I think we'll talk a little bit about what it's actually like growing up with parents who are emotionally stunted themselves and are just unable to make that emotional connection with their children. So I think we'll start off talking about that.
Yeah.
Did you want me to start with my experiences first?
Yeah. You go on. I have the more positive counterpart afterwards.
Okay. So I think we talked about it a little bit in the last video where I talked about having an emotionally distant father, and it wasn't until quite recently, actually, within a couple of days after we did our session together, that I realized that there was stuff from the feminine aspects, so from the mother, my mother, that I had to clear as well. Because whilst my dad was, or still is, not very in touch with his emotions at all, my mother, to some aspect, to some degree, was also similar to that. And so when we were growing up, we were never encouraged, my brother and I can't speak for my brother directly, I'm only going to speak from my experience, but we were in the same household. We were never encouraged to feel our feelings, to shine a light on our feelings and actually give them a voice. And we were never permitted to feel certain feelings. If anyone who has grown up with narcissistic parents or parents who were simply emotionally unavailable, you would know that you're never encouraged to feel your own feelings. The focus is always on what they need and their requirements and their feelings. And so it's as if, what you're going through, the feelings and emotions that are coming up for you, they're repressed and replaced with, the external. So your focus is always on the external. So their feelings, their requirements, what they need, are they happy? So if you've grown up with parents who encourage that sort of behavior, then you would know, you would absolutely recognize it. And some people don't recognize it for a while, but we'll talk about a little bit later on how that shows up in your later adult life. But for the time being, we're just talking about being in that environment. And there's a lot of reasons why parents are, why they sort of perpetuate that behavior with you. So if they themselves grew up in that sort of environment, so if they themselves had emotionally unavailable or aloof or distant or even absent parents,
Yeah.
then they are not really taught to cultivate love, self-love, and recognition of their own emotions. And they're not in turn taught how to actually process and deal with their own emotions. And so the default mechanism is to just repress them, because they're not actually taught how to deal with their emotions. And they're not even taught that having emotions is a valid thing to do. So again, but that was their choice. So we're talking about, so your experience of your parents, sometimes that's actually perpetuated even further back. That's their experience with their parents as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they don't, parents who are like that and people who are like that, if they were never taught to cultivate self-love and they were never taught to nurture their own emotions, then they can't teach that in other people. So they can't teach what they don't know. So if you've grown up with parents who are like that, and you can sort of see the pattern, oh, well, yes, they experienced that from their grandparents or from your grandparents or their parents or whatever it is, then you can sort of see the pattern sort of repeating. And now it's come to you, where you grew up in that situation. Yeah.
And just in general, because like think about how we learn to walk, how we learn to talk, how it's always like how your environment is like how you learn to be as a person.
It molds you as a person.
Exactly. And also like yeah, and I mean if your grandparents, for example, like I can say with my mom and their grandparents, like I know that my mom loved her parents so much, and they were really unconditionally loving and really like emotionally there, and really loving and kind. And my mom also was very loving and kind and caring. So I'm very 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 thankful that I got to have a very loving and kind mom. And so in that sense of I can see that that's why she was like that, because her parents really like sacrificed themselves, like parts of themselves to give to her and her brother. So it's in a sense and this is not an excuse, like if it's not there, if like with the narcissistic aspects, it's not an excuse, it's just for you to help you understand why they might be the way they are. Because sometimes it's like, why are you that way? Why can't you be open? Why can't you love? Why can't you why can't you show emotions? It's because they may never have learned it. I mean, let's put it another way. Let's say we all wake up now, and you're and we have to speak, I don't know, Chinese or something. If you've never learned Chinese, how can you expect to speak it? So and that's the same way with dealing with emotions. And it's also I mean, I talked about this before. I don't know if I ever really also saw my mom cry. Like, she hid those things too, like with me as a kid. So I also was always like mostly seen the sunshine side of life. So now I personally also have to deal with, oh, it's actually a good thing to cry. It's actually a good thing to ask for help. It's actually a good thing to deal with emotions. So I think actually almost everyone struggles with letting their emotions out, at least a bit, or letting them flow. But in kind of your situations, it's like, it's not just, oh, it's like 10% of it or 20% of it, but like it's a whole range of emotions that might needed to be learned.
Yes, because still there is so much of an emotional block there with my parents. So there's a lot of difficulty there connecting on an emotional level. And so if you've grown up in that sort of environment, and that environment has molded you to be emotionally distant yourself, you're going to attempt to repeat that sort of relationship dynamic with all other relationships in your life, because that's all you know. So those that toxic like relationship interplay that you've grown up with, that becomes like home to you, because that's all you know. It feels like home. So what you either knowingly or unknowingly do invariably is to recreate those sorts of relationships in your future adult life.
Yes.
I know that was definitely the case with me, because I was so emotionally just not present with myself. I attracted these relationships with men that, again, they were emotionally distant. They did not want to deal with their own issues. And I was always accommodating their emotions. I was always accommodating their needs, because I was never focusing on, well, hang on, what are my needs in this scenario? What do I need out of this relationship? How do I actually feel about myself, about self-worth, about this relationship, about my life in general? Those feelings I learnt early on were not valid. I learnt early on that my feelings were not valid, and that I was always to accommodate and seek external validation from others. And it was always about what they required. So the attention was always on others, never myself. So if you've grown up in that sort of relationship household, like as a child, and if you look at your relationships now, do they actually mirror? Do they actually remind you of the relationships that you had with your parents as a child? And we'll talk a little bit about that later on.
And
But
just in general, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. And just in general, it's again like, you can't, if you don't know how to deal with something yourself, like it's like when you can't feel your emotions, you also won't, like, let's say you never got to learn a positive emotion like love, you know, like someone telling you, oh, they love you, but like through emotions, not through like materialistic things.
Yes.
You will be completely perplexed if someone would come up and be like, oh, I love you, when it's something you have never known, and you only know it through like, let's say, materialistic things. But actually it's the emotions that you need, and it's also this is what actually home is. It's not anything else. The real, like, unconditional love, or love in general, that is what actually home should be like. And it really is important to like you just said, it's now important now to look at your life on the outside and see, okay, where do I get my love feeling from? Is it myself? Because you need to have your own self-love. That is so important, because if not, you can't accept anyone else's. Like I just said, if someone comes to you and says, I love you, you're like, oh, you're just kidding if you don't love yourself.
Or you recognize it as true love.
Yeah.
That's not what you grew up with.
Yeah.
That's not the sort of love or affection, if any, that you grew up with.
Yes.
And so when something genuine does come along, you won't recognize it.
Yeah. Or even accept it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about the steps as to how, because we don't want this video to be too long. So if you feel like there is fundamentally something off with your relationship with your parents, and if you feel like you've numbed yourself to your emotions, and you're only constantly focusing on the emotions of others, and you find yourself in, you know, these relationship dynamics where you're constantly seeking the validation and approval of other people in your life, whether it be intimate partners, extended family members, or work, like within your work relationships, if you're constantly attracting those sorts of relationships, then and you know, you recognize that maybe there's something a little bit off here, and I feel like, you know, it's hard making an emotional connection with my parents. That is actually the first step to it, is to actually admit that what you had happened to you as a child was actually true, that there was something off with the relationship with your parents. Yes, they may have given you everything else in terms of a material support or whatever it is, but still fundamentally there was that emotional connection that was lacking there. Because it's very easy for someone on the outside to look into your life and say, well, you received everything, you know, you never went to bed hungry, or you never, for example, you know, you received an excellent education. I mean, from the outside looking in, people can look at your life and think, oh, well, you had it all. They gave you everything. But fundamentally, you know that there was always something missing. And it was that emotional connection where you weren't able to feel validated or feel supported on an emotional level from your parents. And no amount of material possessions can ever account or replace the fact that you didn't receive that emotional support. So the first step, I would say, to actually removing yourself out of that, my notes just fell, removing yourself out of that toxic like relationship interplay as a child, is to actually step on the outside of it and say, yeah, that's actually what happened to me. And what I felt was true. So validating your feelings when you were taught all along not to, and say, yes, my feelings are valid. Yes, what happened to me was actually true. And that was my experience of it. Yes. So the first step is actually to admit that what happened to you was actually true.
Yeah. And two things. First, about like needs in general. Like, if we just saying again, if we look, if you know, we live in a society that is very, very, very focused on all the materialistic things, and I mean, it you know, I mean, hundreds, thousands of years ago, we didn't have all these things.
No.
Earth was our provider of all these needs.
Mm-hmm.
And people like your tribe and your family, that they were the people that you needed for the emotional like empowerment kind of yourself and growth. And that is still like it. But if everyone focuses just on the outside things, you can't actually grow into a full into your full true self, because you need the inside to be full, so you feel empowered and want to live and be happy and can create more. Because if it's only like, it's, I don't know, it's let's say it's about how can I say it? Let's say if you are a flame, you know, you need you don't need to be like showered in, you don't need like something to get over you and then the air is off, you know, you put out the light by putting something over the light, but you need it to be free. And you only can be free when you have the room to actually show your emotions and be, like you just said, yes, validated in what you're going through. Because if something is like, oh no, it's not actually true, it's not actually happening, you can't feel that way, because oh, that's like a rebellious act, because we actually all are like this, like no emotions, no emotions, no emotions. And then when someone comes up, oh, but I want to have my emotions, everyone else like, no, you can't do this, because then we also have to feel all our emotions. Because, you know, mirroring is real. Like, when that's also why, you know, like it's like, oh, it's a rebellious act, because it shows like, oh, damn it, maybe this is actually the way how we need to be and feel. That is the first thing. And the second thing is like, only through accepting like a hurtful and bad situation is how you can free yourself from it. And then like, you probably want to talk about this, the second step is, oh, when you accept it, you can find a way of healing it.
Yes. So you're right. And I'll only add one more point, is no amount of material possessions, no amount of you know, the tangible material money, all of that stuff is ever going to replace the fact that there is that emotional aspect that has to be fulfilled as a child in order for correct emotional development to happen. It's not, oh, the material stuff is instead of the emotional stuff. It's the emotional stuff has to come first. So fundamentally, people have to be in touch with their feelings in order to cultivate and nurture that in other people, in their children. And then any of the other stuff that they want to give their children further to that can follow. Yeah. But it's fundamental stuff that has to happen first.
Sorry, I just thought about an example. Let's say the emotional and like the caring and being there, like emotionally being there, that is like actually your house. Like brick for brick for brick, windows and so on, like a roof. Mm-hmm. The material things is like the paint. Oh, what kind of doorknob do we want to have?
Exactly.
Oh, do we want to have blinds, or do we want to have curtains? That is like, and you can't really, you know, if you would have like just the material things, it's like, oh, you're living on like a wooden platform and you have all these things there.
Exactly.
When it's raining, you know, you can't stop it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. There's no actual foundation for putting all those extra fixtures on. It's just the shiny bells and whistles without actually substance there.
And again, like you said, you can't even put it somewhere. Like, what do you do with a doorknob without having a door?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, you can maybe trade it, you know, for maybe another one, but it doesn't give you a house. And like, again, like this is an inside house that you need.
Exactly. And so that would be the first step. So the first step is actually acknowledging that what happened to you was quite painful and valid. Your experiences are valid. People who have grown up with narcissistic, emotionally unavailable parents are going to have problems even acknowledging that their emotions are valid and the experiences that they had are valid. So that really is the most fundamental step, is that first one, to actually acknowledge that it's true.
So let's repeat that. Your emotions are valid. Whatever you have been through is valid. You have the right and you have the chance to now go through that shit and find your emotions and be happy and heal.
Exactly. Totally agree with that, Lena. And so the second process, like this, the second thing that has to sort of come out of this is you need to let go of this ideal that you had of your parents. So if you've grown up knowing that there was always something off, or believing that, oh, I wish my mother could have just done this, or I wish she would have been this way and she should have done this. Actually letting go of your ideals of what your parents should have done in order to fully accommodate you emotionally is also an incredibly helpful step. Now, is that like justifying their actions or absolving them of their responsibility or making it okay what they did? No. This is more for you so that you can sort of unlock yourself from any of the ideals or fantasies that you might be subscribing to, that, you know, that your parents should have been this way or should have done this. And just recognizing them that, you know, they're people and there is going to be mistakes, and not all people that have children are going to automatically know how to parent their children and emotionally support their children, because they oftentimes would have not learned that lesson themselves. And so there is a certain messiness that comes with, you know, being a parent, and you will make mistakes and it's not a perfect process. And so really acknowledging that and letting go of the ideas of, oh, well, my mother should have done this and she should have protected us in this way, or my father should have been like this. That's what a real, or like an ideal father would have done. Letting go of those ideals and no longer subscribing to those thoughts and beliefs, I think is the next step to sort of take on after that.
And with that, not only what they should have been, but also what they are now, in a sense of you can't change anyone else, and you can't change you are the, like, you can't change them now, even, you know, if they have been probably like this like for 20 years or longer or however, you know, it is very, very unlikely, I suppose, sorry if
I agree with that as well,
that they change actually and are like, oh, that picture perfect like dream version that you want, because then maybe, you know, they probably would have learned it before. It doesn't mean that there can never be somewhat of a change, you know, because the more you heal, the more you can actually deal with an environment like that. And, you know, but it's, you can't change anyone else, and you can't change
their journey
like that. And with that, also saying for the people that actually, or in general, for the people that actually are having loving, kind parents, or in my situation are lucky to have someone that is loving and kind, because I would give everything to have my mom back. And it's not just parents, but also friends and other family members. Like, really, like, be thankful for them and focus on them when you need support. Don't focus on the people that can't be there for you. You know, like, if you're still in the learning phase of, oh, how do I support myself emotionally, and it's hard for you, then please go to someone you trust and that you feel safe with. And I don't mean someone toxic, but someone really nice and genuine. Go to these kind of people, or go to a professional. Go, I don't know, you can also always book in with us and talk to us, you know. So please go to someone that is, first, not someone that saying like something like that has been okay, because it hasn't been okay, but that is telling you the truth. Yes, you went through shit, and yes, that is not how you, that is, you are so much more worth than being treated like that. Yes. So first, someone that is that honest and true, and then someone that can help you, that can that can just first listen to you, because listening to someone telling their story like this is giving so much support already. And it doesn't matter even what the situation, but you expressing your emotions actually then and telling the story, that can first be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it because this is so hurtful, but that is also like, oh, this is actually true, by telling it and showing it in a sense, and this is empowering, and then you can go on and do the next step.
Yes. And having someone look in on your experience in a compassionate manner, not someone who's going to judge you.
Yeah.
Or say those things that we talked about before, saying, oh, well, you had everything, you're just being ungrateful. But someone who can actually look on your experiences with a compassionate eye and not judge you can be also very, very healing, and really help you in the steps to actually overcoming what you did go through as a child. Yeah. Yes, so I definitely agree with that. Yeah. And then once you let go of the dream, because we were saying that, you know, let go of the fantasy, because if they haven't changed by now, they're not likely to change. So letting go of that dream and no longer putting all your hope and all your faith, no longer pinning them on that person to change and then turn around and validate and recognize you, is also a very important step. Just let go, because if they haven't changed by now, they're very unlikely to change. And that's just, yes, it's probably going to be the most bitter pill you ever have to swallow, that someone that you truly love and care for deeply cannot actually reciprocate, cannot or will not reciprocate those feelings to you. That can be incredibly painful, but that is something that you need to let go of. You need to accept the fact that they're not going to change. And that is where you're going to actually start focusing on your life and start focusing on getting you better.
Exactly.
Removing yourself out of that situation and putting the focus all on you, because that you don't have the power to change anybody. And truth be told, you have no right to. That is their journey. That is their decision. And if they choose not to deal with their issues that are going on, that is their choice. But as an adult, you can sort of remove yourself from that situation and say, yes, okay, so that's their job to heal themselves. This is my responsibility now to heal myself. And I'm taking responsibility and I'm taking accountability for my own healing.
Yeah. And like you used the word grieve last time, because actually these kind of things are also valid. Like it is totally okay and even important to grieve.
Yes.
Like I don't know if I can put it that way, but the grief of a wishful, like the wish for a parent that is that way you need you want it to be.
Really, it is the death of a dream that you've held for so long. And that's very difficult as well. Because if you've had this belief for the longest time that your parents will eventually change and eventually validate you and turn around and say, you know what, I recognize you. I recognize your pain. I can feel your pain. And I acknowledge that you're going through something. If you've held the longest belief that your parents will one day turn around and do that, and then when they continually engage in toxic behaviors with you, continually, you know, you're in this cycle with them, around and around you go, and they don't actually fulfill your expectations. There is a mourning process that one has to go through when they're letting go of that illusion, something that they've held onto for so long, that they will actually get the validation and the support that they need on an emotional level from their parents.
Yeah.
There is a mourning process. There is a grieving process that has to take And there's no time limit on that. No time limit. So every person is different. Every person is different, and every person will require a different time to go through and process that loss, because it really is a loss. It really is a loss.
And in general, saying with grieving, like, don't judge yourself for, you know, like, just saying, like, this week, you know, I was actually crying like a baby missing my mum, and I didn't thought I had to, but I obviously did, you know, and I was like, oh, I thought I'm quite over this. And I don't think you can ever be over something like that. I don't think you can ever be over like the loss of a parent, or the, you know, like, or the loss of someone, something that you love, because you obviously loved your like, or tried to love your parents, you know. You know, at least there was always a try. And the thing is, like, I think a very let's say beautiful understanding of grieving is actually that you have so much love and you don't know where to go, where you know, you don't have any place to put it, because that person is not there anymore, or they never have been there emotionally. And I mean, like, yeah, like, valid that this might be something you will always have in your pocket, and you always be like, oh, okay, this is a trigger point for me, and this is a thing that might come up throughout your life always, you know. It's something you probably will carry forever. It's like a scar, you know, it's a scar. But as long as you know how to like this, like, let's say there's a scar and it always opens up again, then if you give yourself the love and the time to grieve and to cry and everything like that, then the scar may close up again. And it doesn't, and I mean, in grieving, like, also saying, like, it doesn't even need to be a parent, it can also be a family member or a friend or even a pet, you know, like someone, a dream that you loved. It is valid that you acknowledge that you give, that you have these emotions, and it's needed to feel them and not to numb out.
Exactly. To honor them as they come up, because there will be things that will stay with you. There will be things that, you know, you can't quite ever forget. Like, you understand where they came from and you can understand the basis for them, but there will always be things that, you know, you'll just always remember. So it's important to allow yourself, this is part of the process of healing from this, because you were never allowed to feel those feelings as a child. You have to permit yourself now as an adult to feel the feelings that you were never allowed to as a child. That's a fundamental basis of healing from this sort of experience. You have to honor them as they come up and not push them down. When you push them down, then you're seeing the world, you're seeing yourself through the lens that your parents may have seen you, your narcissistic parents. And you don't want their perspective to color your opinion of yourself. Your feelings are valid, and as they come up, you need to honor them.
Yeah. And it's also very possible that if you now, I mean, you know, it's also a growth process of actually, like, being, like, really feeling these emotions, because it is hurting AF. It is hurting AF, and you may feel like you're dying, and you don't know how to go through, and you wish you don't understand, and you're like, why am I even living? Why do I even have this life? This is hurting so much. And it may not even, like, maybe next time it even hurts more. But that's something that, you know, from my grieving experience, I can tell every time I go through a shit phase like this, where I'm crying and I don't know how to go on, the next day I am so much stronger than I ever have before. I am so grateful for life, and everything seems to be much more I want to say colorful, but powerful came out too. So both, like, you find your sunshine again. So please never ever give up on yourself, and never ever give up on knowing that you can be happy whatever you have been through. And, like, even if you haven't been shown or taught to like love properly, it's never too late to start choosing yourself and to love yourself. Exactly. It's never ever too late. So yes,
So this is now the stage where the next step in this sort of process, if you will, is to treat yourself with the compassion and with the love and with the caring and acknowledgement and nurturing that you wish that you had received when you were a child.
Yeah.
So to treat yourself with that caring and to replicate the feelings and the emotions and the support that you wish you would have had when you were a child. So that may mean getting in touch. Actually, it definitely means getting in touch with your inner child.
Yeah.
And revisiting the painful scenarios in your life that occurred when you were a child, and being there, standing, being present with your inner child and comforting them in the way that you wish you would have been comforted in those situations.
Yeah.
So it will involve going back to situations, but this time you're going back as an adult with an adult perspective, an adult mind, and the adult capacity to remove that child from that scenario and change the outcome.
Yes.
Change the outcome. So hold their hand, hug them, tell them the things that you wish that you would have been told when you were in that scenario, when you were 10 or 11 or 5 or however old you were in that scenario. So it does go back to, again, you have to replicate, you have to be the parent, you have to reparent yourself. I know as an adult, there's a lot of things that you have to learn, but also as an adult, I've learned that there's a lot of things you have to unlearn. And the opinion that your parents had of you and is one of those things. If you grew up with a person with parents who were like this, narcissistic, emotionally unavailable, they imprinted an opinion of you that now you have to unlearn. So you have to go back and treat yourself, treat that inner child, and treat yourself now with the compassion that you wish you would have received when you were younger. Absolutely.
And I mean, it may seem a bit stupid talking about this, but I'm so thankful that I know this now, and this is like how
not stupid, Lena. No, absolutely.
How I need to, like, what I need to be feel loved, and that is through, like, I did the test about the 5 love languages, you know, and there are different like languages of how you need to love: physical, affectionate, material, quality time, and what was the other one? Service, like doing something. So if you know what you need, you know, then you can give it to yourself, because sometimes, you know, you may be someone that is like needs like that act of service, you know, and that is like someone could show it to you by helping you do this or that. And sometimes you actually need to give yourself like the tough love in order to make it happen. Because if someone else would, like, let's say you don't want to do the dishes, you know, and you wish, oh, that would be wonderful if someone was there to do the dishes, but there's not someone there, so you have to be tough on yourself and show you the love and be like, okay, let's do the dishes because I love myself so much that I want to have a cleaner environment, you know. And so it's not easy. Like, loving yourself is not always easy. It is, because you know, you struggle with yourself. It's not just that you struggle with other people, but I mean, every one of us knows that, you know. It's mostly that probably we struggle with ourselves. So it needs to be, sometimes there also needs to be the tough love in order to,
of course,
get then the other kind of love.
It's teaching you that self-reliance. So when you're a child in that situation, you're always told to rely on other people for validation and other people to tell you what your feelings are. But this now is about you relying on yourself, you validating your own feelings, and you being able to soothe and self-regulate your anxieties and those emotions that come up, simply by just being present with that inner child. And I think it goes back to what Ela, you know, that video that Ela recently made about being present on Instagram. I'll link her details. But she did a video recently which helped me quite a bit in the last couple of days, is that you need to be present, because that's often what you're seeking in other people. And if you've had an experience with a narcissist, or you've had parents like that, then you definitely have the experience of seeking presence outside of yourself, seeking someone to be there for you outside of yourself, because you're constantly in that push and pull with people trying to seek or chase validation. But this sort of process teaches you that you need to validate yourself. Your feelings are valid, and you need to feel your feelings and be present with your inner child. So when these feelings of anxiety, or when a memory comes up of something painful that your parents, have done, or painful situations that you were in, actually turn off all the computers. If you can lay down, and just be present with yourself. Go back to that inner child in that situation and stand next to them and say, I'm here. They couldn't be there for you. They still can't be there for you, but I'm here. So that's what you need to do. That being present for yourself is so essential to healing.
And like when you go through these like sad, hard times, like when you, for example, when you do have a memory with your inner child, after you've been through the situation and your mind may be replaying, then it's also important to, like, when you've done all the crying and all of that, or even anger or whatever kind of negative emotions come through, then it's also important to take like a deep breath and be like, okay, and now my lovely inner child, now it's time to play again.
Exactly. That's it. Absolutely. Give them do things that you wish you could have done as a child, so that you were never permitted to do as a child. So feeling your feelings was one thing, but I'm sure there were other things that, you weren't allowed to do, or you could not do because you were a child in that situation. But now you're an adult and you have the power to do whatever it is that you want to do. And so do it. Whatever makes that inner child happy, whatever brings out the playful aspect and the joyful aspect in the inner child, do it. Absolutely. Yeah. I just want to finish off just one more point, and I just want to reiterate it. You already brought it up, and that was seek help. So definitely, if you feel like you need support throughout this process, or you have experienced any of the things that we've talked about in this video, definitely get yourself either into therapy. I would definitely recommend that. So get yourself into therapy. You can speak to your doctor, you can speak to a trusted family member, and seek help. Reach out to organizations, reach out to psychotherapists, reach out to, people who do the sort of work that we do, like spiritual sort of regressions, that sort of work. Reach out to people if you feel like you need help. Absolutely.
And most likely, actually, I think, and I am personally learned that too with my mum's grieving, my mum kind of is actually everyone needs help.
Yes.
You may be very, very, very strong on your own.
Yes, and that's fine. That's fine.
And that, and it also takes a process until you may be ready to open up and actually seek that help. But again, someone just listening to you and like having compassion and being like, yes, that is like acknowledging that it's true, to give you like, to help you.
Especially if they've gone through
healing. Yeah, that is so healing. And so know that it is okay to seek out help. You don't need to go through something like this alone, whatever it is.
Absolutely
you don't need to go alone that way.
Yeah. Well, I think now is a good time to just end it there, if you're happy to, Lena.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Everyone a big hug, because
oh, Lena. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I know that this was a difficult topic for you to talk about, but I feel like some of the messages that we went through really needed to be heard. So because this is going up on both our channels, so for my viewers, I will have my links in the description. I'll have the links to Lena if you want to reach out and work with her. I will also link Ela, so you can follow her on Instagram and have a look at that video that she made about presence, because I feel like that was a very poignant video that she made. And yeah, so any other, like all information, all links will be in the description.
With me too.
Thank you so much, Lena.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.